We're going to find out a few things today. Now, I watch a lot of stuff like this where people are living out and about in the wilderness. And more often than not, either the host of these videos, where there's a narrator, and or in the comment section, people will use words like savage or primitive or uncivilized. But like I've said before, how we live looks to be more uncivilized than people who live out in the wilderness. The way we seem to destroy everything we put our hands on.
Strongly believe. I know good people that love the Lord as much as I do that believe the opposite, and they're wrong and I'm right. Okay? Very simple. Okay. I can. In the King James, 2 Peter 2:21, talked about people that have never heard the gospel and people that have heard the gospel, like people from other countries or small tribes. 2 Peter 2:21. Let me get that one looked up here. I think God will judge people according to what light they have had. There are many stories about missionaries going to arrive at a place. Somebody see if they can see the book back there on one of those shelves in my library called about the missionary that went to, it's a whole series of stories to illustrate. I can't think of the name of the book now. Don Richards wrote 3 different books. He was a missionary. It's a fabulous book. Eternity in Their Hearts. Does anybody see that book back there? Eternity in Their Hearts. It's on one of those shelves. Anyway, missionaries quite often show up someplace where no white man or no civilized person's ever been, and they all of a sudden they find out, wow, these people already have an understanding. I think God is so concerned about getting people saved and converted that he will try to make sure somebody gets there. Did you find it? No, it's okay. Yes. Oh. This one missionary, I think he was from Sweden, if I remember the story. It's been 5 years since I read it. He went out to someplace, I think it was Cambodia, if I'm not mistaken, and was building a mission compound. Some 100 miles away, maybe through the jungle, this witch doctor stood up with the tribe. They're all dancing around the fire with the bone in their nose and everything, and the feathers in their hair. He says, hey, the white man has come, saddle the pony. Oh, so they saddled the pony. He said, follow the pony. And all these non-Christians, never heard of Christianity, they followed the pony for 2 weeks over the mountains, through the jungle. Sometimes the pony would sit there and eat, and they'd sit and watch it all day, Finally, the pony came over this mountain and walked up to this little clearing in the jungle, and there's a pile of rocks in a circle, a well, and a little hut over at the side. And they didn't see anybody. They went over, looked in the hut. There's nobody there. So they walk over, and they're looking down inside this circle of stones, and there's a white man down. They'd never seen a white man. He's down there digging the well. It's a hand-dug well. And they start screaming in their language, where's the book? Where's the book? He looks up and sees all these guys with the bone in their nose and their spears and the war paint all over and thinks, oh, Lord, I'm coming home. He doesn't speak their language. So he starts climbing up very slowly, and he says, excuse me, what would you like? And one of the guys in that group happened to speak that language that he had learned while he was there. And so they said, oh, we want to know where the book is. He said, what book are you talking about? He said, you're a white man. You're supposed to have a book that tells us how to find the God that we lost. Our grandparents knew about this God that was the God of the universe, but they lost the book, and now we don't know how to find him. Where's the book? I mean, you can drive a semi through that opening. But there are hundreds and hundreds of stories like that where missionaries show up, or if you want the light, God will send you the light. God will send it to you. Okay, so that's my take on that.
Described them as uncivilized. He was talking about people who live out in the wilderness. Suggested that they needed to be civilized. Now let me ask you a question, but before you answer, wait for the next clip I'll play. And the answer is, was what he said racist? Don't answer yet.
Of African liberation. That is all I am worried about. Now, let's see. Good question, though, my brother. Very good question. Do you think blacks globally, wait a second, would you consider quadroons or someone with a less percentage as black? Do you think historically Africans have had the power to oppress another group? Ancient African society, before we fell from our great empire, we had the ability to oppress, but we didn't. If you study traditional African culture and traditional African kingdoms in the ancient African world, we used our power to uplift the rest of the world. Africans civilized Europe. We built ancient Chinese civilization. We built ancient Indian civilization. We built ancient American civilization. We have always used our knowledge and power and resources to enrich the whole world. And that is why I believe, that the only way the planet Earth will function the way that God intended is for the African man and woman to reclaim their royal position.
He said, no. Africans went around the world civilizing the world. Now answer. Was what Kent Hovind said racist when he said that the people needed to be civilized? And if your answer is yes, then I hope your answer is the same when I ask you, is what Umar Johnson said racist when he said that the world needed to be civilized by Africans? One of the things that I aim to get people to understand is how people get colonized and enslaved. The mindset of Kent Hovind and the mindset of Umar Johnson. Both thought it was a good idea to go around imposing upon people and describing it as civilizing them. Now, something I got off Darrin page. I'll put it in the description box.
Canada is unearthing its brutal history, a history where thousands of children were put forcibly in Catholic residential schools. They were torn away from their families, put in crowded boarding schools and subjected to sexual, physical and emotional abuse. By the end of it, thousands of children went missing. What was common among them? They all belonged to Canada's indigenous communities. They were natives. And they all most likely died in school. 80-year-old Florence Sparvier went to the same boarding school. Earlier today, she shared that indigenous people were labeled heathens by members of the Catholic Church, and the nuns told the children that they did not have souls.
I'm 80 years old, and I went to boarding school down there. I was taken by my parents to go. At that time, if the parents didn't want to allow their children to go to boarding school, one of them had to go to jail. So in order that we keep the family together, we went to boarding school. They brought us there, we stayed there. And we learned, they pounded it into us, and really they were very mean. When I say pounding, I mean pounding. They made us believe we didn't have souls.
Civilizing the heathens. She was talking about all those bodies they recently found buried underneath those schools in Canada. People like Umar don't care to acknowledge that different groups of people have their, different groups of people have had their turn on to do what some people see as being on top. And while they're up there, they rape, rob, and pillage. But many people, like Umar says, Africans didn't do that. But I know different. Africans did the same thing we see Caucasians doing today. It is crazy how I've heard a lot of black people say that we were the first at everything. The first people on earth, the first in mathematics and other sciences, the first to season our food, the first inventors, the first builders, the first globe travelers, the first to chart the cosmos, mapping the planets and everything. I've even heard black people say that we were the first to visit other planets. And it's crazy how we want to be the first everything except for the first devil on the earth. We just want to be the first good everything that was on the earth.
If we're going to explain these shifts of cultural dominance, we could probably do with an answer that isn't quite so static as the inherent genetic quality of the races. Explanation number 2, high-level ideas. So this is the explanation which mostly comes from conservatives or classical liberals, who at the very least are not so eager to measure the skulls of their black and brown contemporaries. Their notion is that human history is essentially the history of ideas, and the success or failure of any society hinges upon the intelligence, talents, and morality of those living in them. Society's course of history is mostly determined by a small number of exceptional, unique, and heroic, or sometimes villainous, characters. The success of the UK during the Industrial Revolution would be owed to the innovative genius of inventors like James Wyatt and Thomas Savery. For the United States, it would be the Founding Fathers. This is often referred to as Thomas Carlyle's great man theory, the idea that the history of the world is but the biography of great men. So, the more great men there are in a society, the greater that society will be. Why all the great men happen to come from Europe whilst none of them appeared in Africa? No reason. And then we have the collectivist view. In this PragerU video, Bengenius Shapirium says that the success of the West has been owed to its unique combination of Greek reason and Judeo-Christian ethics, which were handed down to us by God. Why God chose to only endow certain people with these ideas, and why only people in the West were able to properly embrace them? No reason. You can see we come to a bit of a dead end here. If Europe was able to colonize Africa, it's because all the good ideas were in Europe and all the bad ideas were in Africa. And I know that seems like an insane coincidence, but those are the rules that I've just made up. And facts don't care about your feelings. I'm so sorry.
Just like the white people who say that they were the first everything good, and black people are the devil. But all people have ill origin stories of other people. Like we're called mud people, and that idea came way before the Mormon church was even thought of. Chinese have ill stories of Japanese, and vice versa. People describing others as having something inherently bad about them, it's nothing new. All people got those stories about others. Like when the real brother has said 1,000,000 times that white people have racist DNA.
And what we have to understand, right, is they can't do anything better because they're just too dumb. And they don't want to learn from Obama. Why? Because he's black. So our solution is to not put them in power. I can't say it enough. You don't understand that white people are stupid. They're collectively stupid. Half of them are going to vote for Bernie. Bernie is a Marxist. Bernie is a communist. Half of them are going to vote for Trump. Trump is a Marxist. Trump is a racist, neo-Nazi nut. But 50% of the stupid-ass white people are going to vote for Trump. 50% are going to vote for Bernie, even though they're a bunch of fools. All right, so welcome back to the second hour of Power, the Real Brother Radio Show, 10 minutes after the hour, and play resumes. Now, we're talking about the racist DNA, okay, in white people. And why do you talk about it? Because everybody always says you can't change your DNA, you can't change your DNA. Who said I was trying to change your DNA? I said, if we recognize that you're a goddamn alcoholic and you got alcoholic DNA, why would we put you in charge of our government?
A lot of black people have said what he just said. We call white people savages, cave beasts, Neanderthals, and the evil upon the earth. Cursed with leprosy, that's why their skin is pale. The opposite of white people who say we've been cursed with dark skin. We have all these beliefs about others, but we don't like when others people's beliefs comes to us.
Hold on one second. Let me pull this up. This guy right here. Hold on. Now listen to this. Hold on. Hold on.
It's this whole debate about the MAOA gene, which is like this gene that black Africans have, like much. It's like a proclivity to violence that they have.
MAOA gene.
Yeah. I recommend people Google it and do their own research. It's like a big debate about whether or not. But basically, like what it is it's. If you think about kind of white European, Asian ancestors, as we kind of moved out of Africa, like aggression and violence was kind of less necessary because we were like farmers and stuff.
But right? God, is that really true?
There's this whole debate about.
Okay. let me, before I unpack that BS, before I unpack that, because there's a lot to unpack with that nonsense. But just the fact that they get on these platforms, Joe Rogan, they throw all types of money to Joe Rogan. They put these people on here to spew all of this anti-black scientific racism. They let these dudes spit this bullshit, and if we debunk them, we get our pages taken down. If we start debunking their scientific lies, if we get to debunking their racist lies that they're trying to use science to justify, then we get dinged and our pages taken down. You see what I'm saying? They give these guys all types of platforms to spew all types of scientific and medical racism, but we can't counter none of it. If we even say certain words, our pages get dinged. But let me go back to, and what he said could be so easily debunked. And it has been debunked. Talking about, they've been trying to push that lie really since really the 80s. That was a lie that was started in the 80s, that black people have a gene that makes them violent. Well, if black people have a gene that makes us violent, how come we've never created global genocides like the white supremacists?
A lot of different groups even have science to back their ill claims about other groups. Tariq Nasheed promotes people like Dr. Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller, who have propagated the idea of white people being inherently violent and evil. But like many black people I've listened to who agrees with Cress and Neely, they don't like to hear Joe Rogan cite his science. Or like Benjamin Rush, a psychologist of the 1700s, who said that black people are mentally inferior. He described it as being niggardly. These days you hear black people today describing certain behaviors as nigger shit, a derivative of niggardly, which comes from the findings of Benjamin Rush, who also said that black skin is due to leprosy.
So when we were taught at home that we had to look after ourselves physically, mental, emotionally, and spiritual. So that got all stripped away when we went to boarding school. They told us what to say. They told us about a new being that was supposed to be our ultimate savior. But the ones we had in our school, they were not nice either. They were very condemning about our people. They told us our people, our parents and grandparents had no. They didn't have a way to be spiritual because we were all heathens. And I was the third one in my family that went to that school. My grandmother went, and my mother and me. So they were still teaching that all the time. So they were putting us down as a people. So we learned how to not like who we were. And that has gone on and it's still going on.
Back to the lady who said that they were made to believe that they didn't have souls. How to colonize and enslave a people. Black people do that today, and I've talked often about how there are many black people on here who loves to tell us that we're on the bottom of the barrel in society and the most despised people on earth. First in everything bad and last in everything good, politically, socially, and economically. Let's hear a little bit of that from this dude named Guy Nollywood.
You know, because my job is not to make everybody feel good. You know, I'm not with all this we are the world bullshit. I'm giving you raw and uncut. And yes, feelings will be hurt. Because like Malcolm said, we're not here to reevaluate the white man. We are here to reevaluate our own people. Because the poor white man, he's not thinking about, you know, he's not trying to find himself. You know, a lot of black people just trying to find themselves and they find a nationality, who are we, and all this other stuff. You know, the poor white man don't think like that. He's thinking about making money. You know, every other ethnic group is in a natural state but us.
Just like the lady that was taught that she was unlike normal people. I hear black people even say that we're cursed by God and all kinds of stuff. Colonized minds. Now, I spoke mostly on black and white, but all groups do this. But no group wants to understand what would justify throwing chains around your neck and ankles. No group wants to understand the mindset that makes a black person in history turn white. But these groups don't understand these groups also don't understand the tearing down of statues of white people. All groups want to depict themselves as the first, but no group wants to be the first evil. Like it was said that Europeans were in the Dark Ages crawling around on all fours. But these days it's the Europeans describing the darker nations as the ones living in the Dark Ages these days and are not as advanced as the modern world.